Is there a possible scenario where Justin Fields plays on opening night?
No, I mean, Andy is our starter. And again, I can't predict anything, that's you know how it goes. I mean, there's so many things that could happen between today and that week one, but Andy is our starter and Justin's our number two. And we're going to stick to this plan.
Hi, it's Cris Collinsworth with the Cris Collinsworth podcast. Welcome in. Thanks for joining us. We're, of course, sponsored by the DraftKings Sports app. Thrilled to have you alongside today. And today we have Chicago Bears head coach Matt Nagy. And I don't think I can remember a time in the past decade anyway, since the double doink, maybe a missed field goal against the Philadelphia Eagles in the playoffs, where there was as much excitement about the Chicago Bears as there is right now. They draft Justin Fields and trade up to get him, and now all of Chicago is abuzz. And the question becomes, how is Justin Fields looking in practice? They are in the middle of practice. He's throwing passes. He's running this offense. Andy Dalton is still going to be the starter, but the clock is ticking. And the great thing about Matt Nagy is he's an honest, forthright guy. He'll tell you what's on his mind. And he has been a developer of quarterbacks. He was there when Patrick Mahomes was drafted and had to sit until the last game of the season, really, where he got a start. And so this is about as intriguing a situation in Chicago as we shall see. So here we go with Matt Nagy, the head coach of the Chicago Bears. Well, here we go with one of my favorites. This guy has had quite the run in the game of football, and we'll go through a little bit of it. But now in his fourth year as the Bears head football coach, made the playoffs 2 out of 3 years, which is significant when you consider before he got there, the Bears had not been to the playoffs since 2010, 7 straight years of a stretch there. Comes in the league, immediately sets the world on fire, going 12-4 and taking the Bears to the playoffs. My guy, Matt Nagy. Matt, how are you, partner?
Good, Chris. I'm doing great. It's always great being able to catch up with you and talk ball, and it's been a lot of fun here in these OTAs, and looking forward to just getting into this training camp.
Oh, baby, do we have a lot to talk about. This has been unbelievable. I've never talked so much about the Chicago Bears, I don't think, in my entire life. We're going to get to some of that stuff, but this is a podcast. And here you are. I've got to get you loosened up a little bit. Here you're where the media grills you on a daily basis. And I'm going to come up there and build your own podcast studio. That's it, man. I'm going to get you a lounge chair, cup of coffee, something to chill out a little bit. What do you think?
No, I'd be good with that. I think there's no doubt about it. It's we're trying to get through this whole Zoom deal and where we're doing it and all these little different setups, but it's all good and we're rolling.
You have had one of the great runs in football with in an unusual path, right? You sort of came through your high school, then you had to sort of convert Delaware from this wing T offense over to throwing the ball a little bit, let you wing it around the field. You set about 11 records at the time you're playing quarterback at Delaware. What do you remember from your glory days there? What's your big takeaway from college football?
You know what, Chris? Probably the biggest thing was, like you just said. I mean, when you think of the wing T in Delaware and Tubby Raymond, you're thinking of instantly a running quarterback. You think of Rich Gannon, you think of Leo Hamlet, you think of Billy Vergantino, and all these guys that were super athletes running with the football in their hand. And I sure as heck wasn't that guy. So when I was coming out of high school in Pennsylvania, Greg Perry, who recruited me, was our offensive line coach. He said, listen, if you come to Delaware, we will definitely open it up more because we're sure as heck not going to be able to run the football with you as a quarterback. So they stuck to their word, and that's what we did. And I ended up I was fortunate to throw to a couple good wide receivers, and Eddie Conti, who played with the Jets for a little bit, and then Jamin Elliott, who was with the Patriots and played in the Arena League. And then, of course, Brett Veach,
I was going to ask you about him.
Make some catches, and he reminds me to this day that how great of a wideout is, and all my success was because of Brett.
So Brett was in Philadelphia, right? When you and sort of at the end of your run in the Arena Football League, which is a whole other documentary on you, which we could go through a million different ways. But Brett Veach, who's now the general manager of the Kansas City Chiefs, was your teammate, and you got there, and you were, at least for one day, a player coach in Philadelphia. You were an assistant coach, a trainee, whatever you want to call it. But then during a preseason game, they actually had you ready to play the game because the third string quarterback got hurt, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what happened was I went there as an intern, and Veach had me come in with Coach Reed and introduced me and said, hey, come be an intern for 3 weeks in training camp. So it was my second year of doing it with the Eagles, and Kevin Cobb had tweaked his ankle in practice, and he was a third string at the time. And, Coach Reed called me into his office in the middle of the day, and he said, do you have an agent? Are you in shape? And do you know the playbook? And I said, yes, and yes. He goes, I'm going to sign you today, and you're going to play in this preseason game this weekend. And I was just like, I couldn't believe it. Here I was selling real estate, and I'm here on a 3-week internship, and he's signing me now as a quarterback to play in the fourth quarter of the preseason game. And then, so I went out the next morning and practiced, had a great time. I played against Brian Westbrook in college at Villanova. So we were teammates for one practice in the morning with Philly. And as I was walking out to the second practice, Tom Heckert, the general manager at the time, tapped me on my shoulder. He said, hey, he's like, Coach, he goes, you gotta go back and put the shorts back on and be an intern coach. The NFL nixed your contract. And so the fact that the Arena League was folding, the fact that, there was some deal, just something just wasn't working the right way. And Philly said, you know what, it's just, we're not going to mess with that. So you got to go put the shorts back on. And it just crushed my dreams. And so I went back to coaching a few more days internship. And then I sold houses for that football season of 2009 from September to December. When that season ended, Coach Reed called me back and offered me an entry-level quality control job. And that's when my career started in 2010.
Yeah, you sort of followed Doug Peterson in many ways,
yes.
Didn't you? And that path, and then when Doug ultimately he was in Kansas City with you guys when Andy goes over there, and then he moves on to the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's really when you got your shot. You got your shot in a bizarre way, because if I remember correctly, in 2017, you were helping call plays for Andy Reid. But your team got off to a hot start, and then the Chiefs sort of hit a swoon there, and you took over the play calling for Andy Reid, and the team got hot, and you won 4 of the last 5 and carried it right into the playoffs. And that's really kind of what set you up to be the head coach, isn't it?
Yeah, you know what? That's exactly right. For me at that position as a offensive coordinator, I was able to be so fortunate and lucky to learn from Coach Reed on how he really does his daily game planning and how he handles situations with when he calls plays and how he calls them. And he's the best to ever do it, in my opinion. And so that year, coach is calling plays the entire season, and we just got into a little bit of a rut. And again, similar to this year with the Bears. In 2017, Coach just came up to me, approached me, and just said, hey, listen, be prepared. There's a chance that I end up having you call the plays for this next game. And that game happened to be against the New York Jets. And so I was super excited. And really the biggest thing, Chris, was when you have a guy like Coach Reed that has taught you everything, and he's mentoring you and teaching you how to be a coach. My biggest thing was I didn't want to let him or the players down. I wanted to make sure that I was completely prepared. I knew the whys of why to call certain plays. As a quarterback coach still at that time, my 5th year with Alex Smith, I did feel like I knew Alex really, really well. I knew the plays he liked. I knew the plays he didn't like. So that was a benefit. To Coach's credit, he literally he showed me that he had trust in me to be able to call plays and just take a step back for him. And that's what we did. And we had some success and we started moving. It's just a change up. It's nothing's too crazy. And unfortunately then in the playoff game against Tennessee, we struggled in the second half. And that was our last time together before I got hired in Chicago. But it really taught me a lot in so many different ways. And obviously, as you can see this year, I kind of used that same experience in my role now as the head coach to give it up. And so, that's why I'm back to calling plays now. I believe that I'm a good play caller. I'm looking forward to it. And it was just that point in time last year that we were in a rut and we needed a change.
So did you make up your mind to take over play calling again on draft day?
Well, no, what's pretty cool about all that was that whole process for us, not just Ryan and myself. That's Ryan Pace and myself. We have a really good relationship. We communicate a lot and we bounce a lot of ideas and thoughts together. And this was obviously the first time that we were in this position together, knowing that the quarterback position could be something that's very serious this year. In prior years, it wasn't such the case. Not that you're not looking at quarterbacks, but in the first round per se. So we were really unified on this together, Ryan and I, and not just us, but the rest of the personnel department, all of our coaching staff. And so the biggest challenge is now going to be, hey, how do you, can we make it happen and how does it happen? And so you literally have no idea until you're up to that pick and that team says, yes, we'll trade you if you're getting that player that you want or not. And so when we got them, we just all were so elated and excited that, man, we put in so much time in studying these quarterbacks and in particular, Justin, that to get them and have it come to fruition was special.
It was so cool. I mean, it just was. And who knows if it happens if Carolina and Denver don't take defensive backs, right? Because then Dallas was looking to trade down. Then the Giants and Dave Gettleman are looking to trade down. Did you guys ever consider moving up ahead of those two teams into, 4, 5, 6, that kind of category to try and get Justin Fields?
So what we did, and this is where I think some of our strengths are in the draft and being able to move. I think we're known a little bit as an aggressive team when it comes to the draft. And so we kind of put together a plan of where we thought we could get to move up and get, Justin and just really in other rounds too, where we feel like we can move up and get certain players that are later in the draft. And so we put that together. We play the what if game. We do all the contingency plans of this happens or that happens. But we felt like we had a pretty good range there in that 8, 9, 10, 11 range. We thought was really where it could happen. And like you're saying, those first really at that third pick of the draft, with Trey going there and then with Atlanta and then the way it fell kind of some other teams there, who they took. As each pick goes by, you feel like your opportunities and your chances of getting that player are a little bit higher after every pick. And now you just don't know, hey, is it going to be at 8? Is it going to be at 9? Is it going to be at 10? Is it going to be at 11? Because, until that team says, yeah, we'll trade you, you have no control. And, Once we got that, yes, we'll trade you on the phone, we knew he was ours. That's when everything changes.
When did you guys first start trying to trade up? Because it was interesting the year before with Tampa, they were consistently trying to trade up the whole entire night and finally moved up one position to get Tristan Wirfs, right? The guy they wanted out of the offensive lineman. How many different calls did you make to different teams to try and get up before you're able to get it done with Gettleman and the Giants?
Yeah, there were some calls that Joey and Ryan were making that actually happened to set the bar a little bit without giving too much away. That prior days to the draft, we wanted to kind of wait a little bit and to the day of, and so we made some calls the day of, just to kind of have an idea of where we could go and what other teams might know or not know about us with that. And then so really to tell you the truth, you just start calling everybody and you just start seeing, okay, hey, where are you guys at? Are you even looking? Like, is it even worth talking about? And if it is, now let's say, okay, keep your phone ready. And when the time comes, I think when you go through these draft processes and these trades, a lot of these cap guys and these general managers, they're really good and savvy, and they kind of know with this point system of what's fair and what's not fair when you're trading. So it's not like you're negotiating in that 5 minutes of really what it's going to be. They all have an idea just because of past history of what that trade value is going to be. So to go back to your question, a lot of those calls are made hours before the draft, during that dead time, before that draft starts. And then it's just, hey, listen, if you're open, we're going to call you. And if our guy is there, we're going to call you. If our guy's not there, we're not going to call you. And so there's just a lot of communication that goes back and forth. And I just kind of sit back and watch it all happen. And it's an exciting time. It's like, I've never been to the New York Stock Exchange, but it kind of feels that way with all those phones, everybody talking and negotiating, and it's pretty cool.
It's such a perfect fit for you, or at least in my opinion, it was, because like Andy, you're going to put people in motion, you're going to misdirection, you're going to be able to get, different things going on. And you've had a mobile quarterback with Mitch, and so that's good. But this guy is a different animal. Now, he is an absolute bear, 225 pounds, runs 4.4. I mean, he can throw it a mile. I had him third. I did. I'll just tell you right where I had him. I had him as the third best quarterback in this draft. Where did you guys see him? I mean, is that far off? I was really stunned that he made it as far down the draft board as he did.
Yeah, no, we again, going through this process of all these quarterbacks, they all have their different strengths and weaknesses. And really with this draft class, these 5 guys at the top, they all had really, really good strengths. I mean, to sit there and say there's 5 quarterbacks that we all felt like have a really great opportunity to be franchise quarterbacks, that's rare. That doesn't happen a lot. And even with that said, as you know, I mean, the numbers speak to it that even with those 5 guys that got drafted there in those top 15 picks, there's still realistically, when you look at it, now hopefully all 5 teams can break that, but there's still a slim chance of all those guys being future franchise quarterbacks for these teams. I mean, that's just the simple facts. That's the numbers. The numbers speak that over the last 30 years. So now for us, I say, okay, well, where'd you have them? Well, we have our own way of ranking these guys, and we all have, we go through and we talk about the strengths and the weaknesses, but then also the fit and how it works for us and the person, who they are as a person. And so again, I just go back to, without getting into the other 4 guys, Justin for us was a major consensus. Everyone felt so great about him and the fit, who he was as a person, all his traits as a player. It just felt too good to be true. And so now that whole draft and develop deal, this is where it's a major challenge and opportunity for myself as a head coach and for our coaching staff with Coach John DiFilippo, and Coach Laser and myself to make sure that we do everything we can to teach Justin how to play quarterback in the NFL. Obviously, continue to coach Andy and Nick and use their strengths. But now we got to develop Justin. And so the $1 million question is, well, when's it going to be? Is it going to be in training camp? Is it going to be in the first game of the year? Is it going to be the 7th game, the end of the year? Is it next year? For us, we put together this plan. And the plan is that Andy is the starter. And Andy's played 10 great years in this league, or nine great years in this league, and had a lot of success. And we're excited to be able to have him come in here and do what we think he can do, but yet also teach Justin how to play quarterback, all of us together, and insulate him so that he can maximize his strengths. And so we'll have that plan and put it together, but it's going to be really, really fun to have a preseason and be able to see what Justin can do in these preseason games.
You're doing all this with a serious face, and I'm sitting over here smiling. All I'm thinking is, Come on, dude. Put him in on opening Sunday Night Football against the Rams. Let's go, baby. Let's see what he's got. But I know you were part of the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, right? And their plan was he really didn't play until the final game of the year. And when he played, I think the whole world went, uh-oh, he really does have it. And how much does that influence your thinking here?
Yeah, no, there's a lot that goes to that. Now, and I think there's two things the way I look at it. Number one is it's very easy for me to be able to explain to Ryan and our coaching staff and everybody else in this building that I lived that. I was in every one of those meetings with Alex and Patrick and Coach Reed. I lived that every day from the day we drafted Patrick to the day we had our first meeting with Alex to the last game, playoff game against the Tennessee Titans that season. And I got to see how that process went. And so I use that and we use that as a blueprint. Does that mean it's going to be exactly that way for us in Chicago? No. And I think that's where sometimes when I get criticized or we get criticized and you say, well, it's not the same thing. Andy's not Alex. Andy wasn't here for 5 years or 4 years like Alex was to build those relationships. That's 100% true. But at the same point in time, in my opinion, I do think that it's very easy to just take every rookie quarterback. And there's good examples of it, of throwing them in right away, week one, and those guys taking off and succeeding. But there's also bad examples of it. And so when we have an experienced quarterback like Andy that can come in here and learn and do things, and he can prove to us and show to us that he can win football games with us, that's how we're going to be evaluating things. And so in a perfect world, Andy comes in and he wins football games and we're having success. And Justin is growing and learning on how to play the quarterback position and not being thrown into the fire without, when he's not ready. And then that goes to the next part, Chris, is like, we knew in 2017, there were some plays that Patrick made in training camp. There were some plays that Patrick made in the preseason games. And there was plays that Patrick made against our defense for the look team on offense during the season that you just kind of know. And you get that look from Coach Reed. He looks out of the corner of his eye to you in practice that was a pretty good throw. And you know it. But until he gets his chance, we don't know when that was. In 2017, it was the last game of the regular season against Denver. And he had a great game. We pulled him in the fourth quarter, had a couple fumbles. I'm talking about Patrick. And we put Patrick back in. He goes right down the field and wins the game-winning field goal. And, the game meant nothing. We didn't have to win it, but it showed everybody what he was. And then the following year, Kansas City traded Alex and Patrick threw for 1,700 touchdowns. A really, really, really solid, good plan for both quarterbacks. And Patrick, I think if you asked him, would tell you that year right there taught him so much on how to watch tape, on how to practice like a pro, how to take care of your body. He just sat back and observed. He didn't run his mouth. He didn't try to come in and be all cocky and take it over from Alex. He just did he stayed in his lane and he earned the respect from his teammates the right way and his coaches. And when he had his opportunity, he took advantage of it. For Justin, he's doing the same thing right now. But at the same point in time, don't think that Patrick and or Justin don't want to come in here and compete and do everything they can to be the best quarterback and that number one guy. I mean, that's why they're at where they're at right now, because they're major competitors and they're driven inside with that DNA that just not everybody has. Justin has it, and that's what's pretty cool.
He definitely has it. And I'll tell you when I saw it, Joe Burrow, when he was drafted by the Bengals, came in here in his first press conference. He wasn't talking about which commercials he was going to do or which car or any of that stuff, right? This guy didn't have a smile on his face, and you could just tell he was ready for business from day one. I saw after he was picked, Justin's interview, and you could almost see the chip on his shoulder already beginning to grow, but you could also see that he was a serious-minded guy, that he was coming in for business. And I know that's pretty much carried over so far in your practices, hasn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. And it goes back, in my opinion, to how Justin was raised. And I really have a lot of respect for his parents and the way they raised him. When you meet his dad, you realize that his background in military and as a former police officer. And so you can see that. And that he was taught great values on how to treat people. He's competitive. His mom is just really cool and awesome and just a nice lady. And so both of them together, the values they've taught him on how to handle people. That's the other part of this that a lot of people forget and don't understand. And so I think you saw that at his first press conference. You see a kid that there might not be a lot of giggling and smiling because he is majorly competitive. He has this inner drive in him that it's just different. And so when you get him in a setting where it's just one-on-one and you're teaching football, that smile comes out and he'll crack a smile. When he's in the locker room with his teammates, he'll crack jokes. We had some fun last week, our day 3 of OTAs, and we had a lighter practice at the end, and we had a little dance contest with 2 rookies, one from O and one from D. And they started dancing, having the contest, and the music was playing. We were outside on the football field, and out of nowhere, to help his offensive partner is Justin, who comes in and starts dancing in front of everybody. And it's just like, the outsiders probably think that he doesn't have that in him. But when you're in this tight world of friendships and people and your teammates, and your true personality comes out. And I think that's what's pretty cool. And so we feel that on the field. And it's the same thing with Andy, like with Andy and Justin, the relationship that they're building right now in this meeting room is really neat. Again, it reminds me of the way Alex and Patrick were. It took a little time the first couple of weeks, but now they've broken that barrier down. Now they both feel comfortable watching practice together, asking questions. I mean, Andy's pumping up Justin. Hey, great throw, man. That's a hell of a throw right there. Way to use your feet. Hey, on the cadence, give a little more rhythmic to your white 80. Don't be so choppy. So like little things like that they're helping each other out with, and they're building this friendship and this bond that's just really strong. And Nick's the same way. Nick's in there too, helping out. And so what a great quarterback room for a guy like Justin to come into, to have 2 quarterbacks like Andy and Nick. Experience they've had. They're both super good people. They have good hearts, and they want to help Justin out. To me, that's a win all around.
Yeah, I mean, you can't find 2 better guys really than Andy and Nick. I mean, they're just rock solid and have all the experience in the world. But the question now becomes, how's he looked? I mean, you've gotten a firsthand look now. It's one thing to go back and watch his college tape and, all this stuff about, he could read it better. He could get it out of his hand better. Ohio State with a lot of the read routes down the field may slow him down, all those things. But now you're seeing him in the Chicago Bears offense, in your offense. You've played this position. You have coached this position. You know this position inside and out. How does he look? How is it, man? Are you getting as advertised?
No, we are, and he looks good. And but what's really neat is that we realize that he's going to continue to look even better and better after every practice goes by. He had a really good practice yesterday, our 6th OTA day. The ball was just coming out of his hand really nice. He was very accurate. His timing with his feet on play actions in the drop back game, you could just see, like, to him, even in this short time, Chris, the game is slowing down to him, which is what you want at that quarterback position. Can the defense and can the speed of the game feel a little bit slower? From the start when he got here, he's just trying to worry about how to call play, how to snap the ball, and then he's just playing. Right now, he's taking it to the level, and I can see it, we can see it, or now he's understanding, hey, post-snap, that rotation is going from quarters back to cover 3. It just went from split safety to 1 high safety. And your rules change as a wide receiver. Your rules change as a quarterback with your progression. And so now, are you going back there to where you're supposed to go and still making the throw? Yesterday, he had a really good day. And so that's where you get excited, and you just know as a coach, when you, like Flip's putting in all this time with teaching it, when you see it happen on the field, that's when there's growth. That's when there's development.
Okay. How insane has your life become? And are you allowed to even talk about your children or your wife anymore when you go meet anybody? Or is this the only topic of conversation?
Yeah, it's that's a good question. I mean, I'm going to all these baseball tournaments for my four sons that all play, or three of my four play baseball, and it gets to be pretty crazy. I would say it's safe to say that the city of Chicago is super excited about our situation right now in the quarterback room with Justin. And again, for me, it's great to have that feeling. There's a positivity, there's a good vibe, but we also too, like, and I remind everybody, and I know this is where the hard part comes in, like you're asking me right now, is we just have to trust the plan and just trust the process of how this is going to go with him, because we all understand that he's our future. We know that. That's what we want. But how are we going to get to that point the right way? So it's best for the Chicago Bears and best for Justin. And so that's where the total instant gratification world that we live in right now has to just chill just a little as we put together this plan that we have. We insulate them. We make sure, like you said earlier, there's not a lot of stuff off the side of the field he's just literally insulated with football so that he can grow and be the best quarterback he can be as fast as, or as soon as he can be that guy. And so when I'm out and about, everyone's asking about him and they're fired up and excited, and there's just a good energy right now. And that we want to use that. We want to feed off of that, not just with Justin, but our entire team.
You know, it's really interesting, and I've tried to explain this to some people, like as a rookie receiver coming in, I had a lot to learn, and I screwed up more plays in my rookie year than I probably did the next 7 years after that combined. I mean, you just do. There are things that are going to happen that you just aren't going to know. For the quarterback position, it's probably 10 to 20 times that, what the position player is going to have to know. And he has to get in the huddle, and things are going to change. Preseason is one thing, and you get vanilla coverages and vanilla fronts. And then all of a sudden, here we are on opening day against the Rams, if he's in the game, and man, they're coming from everywhere, and I've never seen that coverage before. So mentally, explain the process of how far he has to get before you would feel comfortable with him being in the game and really sort of protecting himself at that point.
Yeah. So mentally for us, it's being able to see how he's processing in practice with like the mechanics of in the huddle, up to the line of scrimmage, guys getting set at the right position. The wide receivers have the right splits. They're on or off the ball. The play clock's coming down. Are you setting the protection a certain way? Are you putting a guy in motion and then snapping the ball and then making the throw? How many of those plays in a row when we watch in practice, are there a lot more plays that are good, or are there a lot more plays that aren't so good? And like, we want to make sure that as he's making plays, he's staying, within the concept or the progression of the play. But then let's face it too, like, a lot of these quarterbacks that are really good and take it to the next level and are special, they make plays on their own. They might make it the best play call in the world. And so when you start having some of those plays where you can just let his talent shine and do what he does best, which is just play with confidence, play fast, and just be himself. When that all starts happening and you don't feel like he's playing like a robot, you'll know that, right? Things will start happening. He'll start kind of, doing his own thing. We'll feel that. And I think mentally it starts with, it's really everything up until the snap. Are you doing everything the right way? And the only way that we can truly evaluate that is you can do it in training camp, but really those preseason games will be really, really important to see how that happens. And then he can just cut it loose and play.
We saw Sean McVay with Jared Goff early on as the play caller, because you can keep the communication going down to 15 seconds, I think. How much of a factor will that be? And are you sort of rehearsing that as the play caller in case he is playing in the game?
Well, yeah, I think there's some advantages at certain times if you feel like that's something you want to do. At the same point in time, once we create this identity of our offense, we want to be able to, we have a guy with Andy that can just literally get up there. And I mean, sometimes he knows what the play call is before you even get the play call in, or he has an idea. I mean, he'll cut you off when you're calling a play in the huddle because he doesn't need the formation. He already knows it. So you might start saying, hey, it's 72 chip hammerhead. And you don't even have to say that it's zebra motion, a gun trips right flex. You know, he knows that. So that's the point of like, okay, we'll have to evaluate and see what Justin can handle. And then we got to work off of that. So the beauty of with Justin is that, and we knew this going into the draft, is his processing, his ability to recite plays and call plays, and all his mental aptitude tests that he took prior to the draft, like everything was super high. And so that's on paper, and that's through a computer. Does it happen on the field? And right now, everything that we're seeing would correlate to yes, it does. And that's always great to see when you have that, because now when you can process not only pre-snap, but post-snap, and you're able to process now the rest of it, you know, it's just, okay, what kind of traits and ability do you have? And that's where we feel like between Andy and Justin and Nick, that right now with where we're at with this offense, they're all picking it up and doing pretty well. Because, you know, Andy's a rookie here too, in a sense. You know, he's learning this offense too.
I want to get to Andy in a minute, but I do have to ask this one question. Is there a possible scenario where Justin Fields plays on opening night?
No, I mean, Andy is our starter. And again, I can't predict anything, you know, that's, you know how it goes. I mean, there's so many things that could happen between today and that week one, but Andy is our starter and Justin's our number two. And we're going to stick to this plan. And, you know, you always hope that nothing happens to Andy as far as injuries or anything like that. And that's why I can't say, well, I can't say 100% because we don't know what's going to happen to, you know, hopefully, you know, everything is good there. But, you know, Andy is where we want him to be. He's had a great OTAs, and we're just going to continue to build with that and do this, stick to where we're at. And we're going to let Justin do his thing in training camp and preseason. And then we'll literally, as we go, just continue to just do everything we can to make sure that Justin is the best quarterback he can be. And then we just got to, in a perfect world, we're continuing to win games with Andy, and Justin's developing. He's getting better and better. And, you know, then it just goes to, we'll know when the time is right and when it's ready for the team and for us to put them in. It'll all just naturally happen. And that's where I truly feel confident about that. I don't think there's any way we have to force somebody in there. I think it'll just be naturally, it'll be organic, and it's going to be the best for the Bears. And that's in the end what this is all about.
Do I have the right to feel a little sorry for my former Cincinnati Bengal, Andy Dalton? I mean, how difficult a situation is this? This is, you know, the only comparison for Justin Fields so far has been Sid Luckman that I've heard, you know, and this poor kid hasn't even played. And now Andy Dalton, who really came to Chicago because it was one of the places he could be assured that he'd be the starting quarterback. And now he's sitting there behind this avalanche, right, that is coming down the mountain. All Bears fans can wait for is the day they see Justin Fields. How difficult is it going to be? Because whenever Andy throws an interception or whatever, put him in. I mean, you know what it's going to be. You've been around this game forever. How do you handle that?
No, that's very real. And again, I think you got to be mentally strong, and Andy is. He's been in a lot of different situations. It starts, number one, with who the person is. So Andy has a lot of confidence in himself. He knew coming here, obviously, before we got Justin, the opportunity that sat in front of him. And then he also knew going into the draft with my phone call that I made to him the day of the draft and the night after we drafted Justin, that we could possibly get a quarterback. And, you know, any natural human being is always going to be like, okay, well, I understand, but I just want you to know I'm going to compete and I'm going to be giving you everything I got. And we're going to make each other better. And that's exactly what he was like, you know, and he's been phenomenal. He knows he completely understands the situation. And he's comfortable in his own skin. He's comfortable with who he is as a quarterback. He's comfortable with his coaches. I'm talking about Andy. He's comfortable with his teammates. He's learning who they are. They're seeing who he is. And so now really what it comes down to, and we all know this, is that, we got to win. And so we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can. And what a great win-win situation that would be for him to be able to come in here. And I think that if you asked a lot of the Chicago Bears fans and our organization, if Andy's our starter and we're winning a lot of games and things are good and we're developing Justin, I think they'd be okay with that as we go. I really do. But where things, like you say, can get hard is when you're losing. And that's where when that point comes and you're losing, and now you got to get to the next level is, why are you losing? And so that's where I believe in our plan. I believe in our coaches and our players, and we just think positive here. So we want to come out, we want to win a lot of games. We want to stick to this plan and develop in Justin, and then let everything else play itself out.
So Andy Dalton starts, and he's got Justin Fields waiting in the wings behind him. Both tackles are gone from a year ago, and you start to add up all this stuff. You do draft Tevin Jenkins. Tell me about, maybe in particular, the move with Charles Leno and the decision with what you're doing at the tackle positions.
Yeah, those decisions are never easy, and I think that's where Ryan and his guys, especially this year, Cris, with the whole cap situation, everything that's going down, you see there's some teams that had to cut the entire offensive line. There's an entire starting offensive line. So we unfortunately, Kyle Fuller as a corner was somebody that I think we ran into that with, and then Charles Leno as well. And so I have a lot of respect for both of those players. They both know that. And sometimes that's a part of this league, is there's movement, and hopefully it works out for both of those guys. And so here we are now, and we made the move in the draft to be able to go up and get Tevin Jenkins, who we have a lot of belief in. We picked up Elijah Wilkinson in the offseason as another offensive lineman. And so we're just trying to have competition as much as we can. And we understand the significance and importance. Now, the other part of this too, I'd say, is Juan Castillo, our offensive line coach. In my opinion, he's one of the best offensive line coaches to really ever coach in this game. And he is an unbelievable developer of talent. And so that's comforting for Ryan Pace and his guys, that when you draft guys, they're going to develop under Coach Juan. And that's where we're at. There's every day something different happens in this league, and you just always got to be prepared. But Jermaine Ifedi at right tackle for us is a guy that after 6 games last year playing right tackle, he did a pretty good job of solidifying that right side. And so again, developing and building trust and learning through Juan, it's really neat to see how he's growing. So we got to keep that going. It all starts with that offensive line, but that left tackle is something we're going to continue to keep growing with.
Can you make a deal with the Green Bay Packers that you'll continue to play Andy Dalton as long as they play Jordan Love? Would that be fair? I don't know.
As long as they play who?
Jordan Love.
Oh yeah. No, I hear you on that. It's pretty amazing the season that Aaron had last year, and playing them twice a year. But it's certainly a unique season.
It's wild, right? I mean, literally, not just the Green Bay Packers season, your season, Tampa Bay season, San Francisco season might come down to the quarterback holdout in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. This is about as bizarre, and it all started all year. I mean, this was Deshaun Watson. This was Russell Wilson. Heck, I thought all of them were going to be on your team at one time or another. and now Aaron Rodgers. As you sit back and watch it as a head coach, what are you thinking?
Yeah, no, it's unprecedented. It really is, but that's where we're at. And I think what it does is it makes definitely you as a head coach, you as a general manager, you got to make sure that in these situations that you have your contingency plan of the what ifs. You just named three of the best quarterbacks to, play the game and that are currently playing right now. So three of the top ones. So that's where it gets unprecedented. And now you're dealing with a lot of, okay, I won't get too much into that side of it because I don't have to deal with it. But it's just wild.
Matt, I've got a million questions for you, but you've been too kind with your time. I really appreciate it. I will see you in Los Angeles for opening night of Sunday Night Football. It's going to be an incredible year. The fans are going to be back, and you have to be excited about what's going on in Chicago.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And I always enjoy talking to you, Chris, and it's nice to have a little bit more of a laid back conversation today, but I know we'll get into some X's and O's down the road, and just hope you have an awesome summer here, and we'll be catching up, like you said, in LA.
I'll get you a chair for our next one. Well, we can't thank Matt Nagy enough for his time. He is on his way into a coach's meeting now, but it is such an interesting situation going on with the Chicago Bears. And want to thank our sponsor, DraftKings. Want to thank you for tuning in to get a little insight as we all get excited as we head towards opening day. The Chicago Bears, the Los Angeles Rams going at it. And don't forget, opening Thursday night on Sunday Night Football this year is going to be a great one. The Dallas Cowboys, the return of Dak Prescott, going into Tampa to take on the world champion Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll see you next week.